Hi friends, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People. I'd like to talk this evening about flow, state of flow. Sent me a link to a gentleman named Stephen Kotler who discusses the flow state as being one part of a four-part cycle. The first part being essentially loading, front loading, setup, road mapping, diagramming out stuff. The second stage being get away from it. The third stage being actual flow, and the fourth stage being recovery. And he talks about these things having a relationship with various neurochemicals and so forth for the purpose of, ideally, helping us to understand how we can best achieve a state of flow and to recognize the limitations in pursuing a state of flow based on this four-part cycle. And overall, I enjoyed this video, actually. I I really enjoyed hearing about what I would call unhacked flow, you know? If you don't hack it at all, you're right. That's what you got to do. You got to go through those four stages. And it was interesting. I think there was only one real mistake in the whole thing when he says it takes, in the recovery phase, it takes certain vitamins and minerals and sunlight and things like that to rebuild them. Well, no, that's not true. I mean, obviously you have to eat, but what it takes actually is sleep. So, in order to rebuild your readiness for state of flow, you need to rest. It's just that simple. Um, Steve Kotler and friends over there at Big Think, I want you to think of it like this, because I like what you're talking about. I like the subject matter, and I like your analysis on it in general, but alright, so think about it like this. The state of flow is one in which you're not experiencing that front-loading part. State of flow is one in which you're not experiencing that stepping away part. So, the key trick then is going to be, how do we get rid of that first part and make the third part and the second part just sort of mush together into one thing? And then get rid of the fourth part except for sleep. Let all the recovery phase go in the sleep phase. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we optimize a state of flow? Number one, not everybody can do this. This is only going to be for people who have certain cognitive functions in a certain order. It's going to probably be for your extroverted intuitors, basically. Possibly INTPs, definitely ENTPs, and ENFPs should have no problem with this as well. What you need to do is follows. To the extent that you have the skill to engage in improvisational making, that's the way you front load instead. And if you happen to be just killing it for whatever reason, then you may be able to bypass the front loading step entirely. Just with the improvisational behavior, if you reach what you would consider an adequately polished product through that process, then you can bypass the front loading, you can bypass the recovery. You're just playing around and just happen to come up with something that is of reasonably high quality. Now, if you don't, if in fact that first playing around effort proves futile, well, at this point, you've done some of that front loading anyway, because you've got your feet wet, you've tested it out, you've played around with it, you've mushed it about a bit. So the problem that Steve Kotler may have is that he doesn't distinguish between constructive and executive work habits. And an executive worker is going to execute a state of flow exactly as Stephen Kotler says. I don't doubt it one bit. A constructive worker is not, for sure, though. And the reason is because, it's just not how we work. This front-loading stage, what you're talking about, when you're reading, you're researching, blah, 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 it's all about where your conscious awareness of the project is going to start begins. Usually, if you're doing it in a way that's the least painful, which is what you want to do, right? You want to minimize the amount of pain in getting to the state of flow and get rid of all the other garbage. Just get rid of that other stuff. We don't want to have to fucking front load. Well, you don't have to. You just got to figure out a way around it, right? We don't want to have to recover. Well, you're going to have to recover, but you can do it while you're asleep. Okay, so key is play. Just be playing around, whatever it is you're doing. When you have a thought about starting a project, nix that thought. You're not starting a project. You're just doing one little detail, one little thing. You're just playing. This is not a project. I'm just playing. Now look. Again, this requires a certain amount of natural inclination towards improvisational work. But if you have that, then what you'll find is that you can construct, with little pieces of improvisational stuff, a complete whole. You can do the editing, you can do the planning after. You don't have to do the planning ahead of time. And when you do the planning after, you get to move into the fun part of the work faster. And it's more likely that state of flow is going to carry through, going to push you through not just the initial enthusiasm for it, because again, you get to the fun part right away, but it's going to push you through to the boring part, because then you have a lot done, you can see the end of the tunnel. That's the key thing. Now, for normal people, I don't doubt that Stephen Kotler's approach, or Stephen Kotler's understanding of this, is probably reasonably accurate, at least bears some resemblance to reality. For the ADD mind, that's not the case. It's just simply not going to be the case that we adhere to any normal sequence, as Stephen describes. In fact, regardless of the Harvard research or whatnot, we know for certain that the ENTP does not go through these cycles, because when the ENTP enters into a work project, he enters it blindly. He enters it with a lack of conscious decision making. It simply is a manifestation of his nature to make. For example, Metasoap, one of my viewers, had commented on one of the threads and indicated that she'd like me to watch this video and offer my own thoughts on state of flow and also self-motivation, self-discipline, things like that. Getting shit done, basically. And I was happy she did. I watched it. I started making this video. I didn't think about it. I didn't sit down and go, I need to manifest a state of flow now. Not remotely. What I did instead was I watched this video. I enjoyed it. I was annoyed by the moments when I thought it was wrong. In my typical fashion, this is very typical of my personality type as well. I want to come into this spot where you've got fairly polished, fairly professional sounding video. You're articulate. You sound like you know what you're talking about. You cite people with fancy words after their names and stuff like that. I feel that whatever reason, I don't know why, I feel a compelling need to, establish a challenge to any pedagogical relationship that might be presumed. I think that's critical. If you really want to be a person who is capable of existing as they want to exist at any given moment, then step one is to make sure that the teachers and the students are in the right relationship. It's the students who always should drive the bus. They're the ones who know best what learning they need and what they're going to do with it. I like your video. I just do this. I don't know why. It has nothing to do with you or anything. You seem cool. I like you.